Who was Cain's wife? This is, without doubt, one of the most fascinating and confusing mysteries in the Bible, and often is an issue for lively debate among theologians and scholars alike, let alone the casual reader. How could Cain, the firstborn son of Adam and Eve, find a wife in such an empty and newly created world? It is a question about the deep origins of human life, biblical interpretation, and early human history in mysterious ways. In this video, we will be covering the fascinating story of Cain and his wife to explore what ancient texts say, what the cultural contexts are, and theories that try to solve this biblical enigma. Now, let us go deep into this ancient mystery. The story of Cain's demands goes way back to the very beginning of humanity, as it unfolded within the biblical worldview. According to the book of Genesis, Adam and Eve were the first human beings created by God and placed in the Garden of Eden. After they had disobeyed and were cast out of Eden, one of those children born to them included Cain and his brother Abel. The firstborn was named Cain, and he was a farmer, and his brother's name was Abel. He was a herder of sheep. A full-blown rivalry evolved between them, which escalated into Cain's infamous act of murdering Abel in a jealous rage, because God favored the offering that Abel brought and not his. As a result of this terrible event, God marked Cain and sent him into exile to wander on earth. And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden, reads Genesis 4:16. It is shortly after this that we come upon the curious statement, Cain knew his wife and she conceived and bore Enoch, Genesis 4:17. But who was this mysterious wife? When did she come into the picture, and where does she fit in with early humanity? These are the questions that have had many readers think, wonder, and come up with their own little story when they can't just get an answer. The most apparent explanation is that Cain married one of his sisters or close relatives. The Bible does say that Adam and Eve had sons and daughters, Genesis 5:4, implying that they had more children besides the few who were named. Marrying close kin would be a necessity for the population to grow in the early generations. A notion quite unsettling to the modern mind, it would carry no social or moral implications in the context of an unpopulated world. The family was contrived differently in ancient times, in which marriage to a sibling or close relative would have been the only practical means of carrying out God's charge to be fruitful and multiply. The close intermarriage genetic concerns were probably not a problem in the earliest generations of humans, as the human gene pool was still pure and not corrupted by the effects of accumulated mutations and genetic disorders. This perspective provides a reasonable, though less than satisfying answer to the question. Cain's wife was likely to have been a sister and another sibling of one of Adam and Eve's many children. This explanation also allows us to understand why the Bible does not exactly name Cain's wife. In a way, her identity was taken as self-understood within the greater context of early humanity's multiplication. But this solution raises questions as to why the Bible, which often is very careful with details regarding genealogy, says nothing about who Cain's wife was. Could there be more to this story that we are not considering? There is also another theory involving the land of Nod and a different population. This is a different theory, which comes across as the Bible talking about the land of Nod as if there might have been other humans besides the family of Adam and Eve. There is no indication of where God had created other people, and therefore the text leaves huge room for speculations that Cain's wife could have come from other humans. In this line of thought, Adam and Eve were specific creations directly from divine origin, but not the only humans God created. This can sometimes be further justified by drawing on the ancient knowledge that perhaps Genesis does not document every happening or creation, but focuses on the lineage of Adam and Eve to recount the story of sin and redemption. The wife of Cain may have come from these other human beings created separately, and the wider context in which the rapid development of early human civilization, including the building of cities and the development of agriculture and technology, could be explained. This implies that there were other people outside of Adam and Eve, which then contradicts the usual view upon which most theological beliefs about original sin and the nature of man were based. If other humans existed apart from them, this brings into question the spread of sin and the need for redemption, thereby complicating elementary biblical doctrines. This is still a popular theory among many today, who would try to make the Bible mesh with scientific assumptions about early human populations. Besides the biblical materials presented above, ancient Jewish texts and traditions reflect additional information that can give meaning to Cain's mysterious wife. Among non-canonical biblical works, the Book of Jubilees, an ancient Jewish work that never was included in the canonical Bible but was widely respected by early Jewish and Christian communities, specifically identified Cain's wife as Awan, one of Adam and Eve's daughters. That makes this text non-biblical, indicating more directly that he married his sister, Awan, reinforcing the view that sibling marriages were common and necessary during humanity's first generations. The works of the first-century Jewish historian Josephus, on the other hand, give something of a fair idea of how early interpreters understood the early narrative of Cain's wife. Josephus wrote, "Adam and Eve had many children, who intermarried with each other, which enabled the growth of early human societies to take place." Indeed, these accounts show that early Jewish and Christian thought favored familial intermarriage as necessary and practical to expand the population in humanity's earliest days. These ancient sources underline the different ways in which early readers of the Bible understood Cain's wife, and how often this explanation returned to the concept of an expanding family unit from Adam and Eve. Such texts not only aim to fill in the gaps left by the biblical narrative, but also reflect the theological attempts towards understanding the complex dynamics of early human history described in Genesis. Who Cain's wife was is not simply a matter of historical curiosity, but bears serious theological resonance. Where Cain's wife came from touches the very heart of human identity, the nature of sin, and even God's creation. If Cain married his sister, it amplifies the unity of all humankind, the shared inheritance of sin that has come down from Adam and Eve, a concept foundational to many Christian doctrines. This further highlights how quickly the sin spread among humankind in this story. From the disobedience of Adam and Eve to the fratricide of Cain, into the issues of early human relationships, the early chapters of Genesis present a world spiraling away from God's intended order. The story of Cain, including his marriage, mirrored the complexity of human rebellion, grace, and the consequences of straying from divine guidance. The growth of cities, arts, and cultures among Cain's descendants symbolizes all the more the potential of humanity to create, innovate, and simultaneously stray from God's commands. Furthermore, the story of Cain acts as a reminder of God's mercy. Despite such a serious sin, God marked Cain not for destruction, but for protection, so that he could build a family and a city and contribute to early humanity. The naming of the city after Cain's son is a testimony to the stability and maintenance of life and the divine allowance for growth, even in light of sin. This incident also points to one of the important motifs of the entire Bible, that God's grace often extends even to those who have committed serious transgressions. Some scholars believe that the wife of Cain means more about symbolic interpretation than about the literal one. The cultures in the ancient Near East used to put symbolic characters in a story so that it would have deeper meanings. The wife of Cain can symbolize the combination of the sinful past and a future that still has hopes to come out bright. Her presence is symbolic of life continuing despite sin, showing that even amidst a world tainted by rebellion, God's command to be fruitful and multiply remains relevant. This view is symbolic, which suggests that Cain's wife, unnamed and mysterious, is less important in terms of identity than in what she represents within the greater narrative of Genesis. She personifies the ongoing human story, marked by sin yet continuing along under God's watchful eye. The marriage and ensuing birth of Cain's descendants act as reminders that God's purposes persist, even as humanity hesitates to do his will. This is a very controversial story today, especially among those who seek to harmonize the Bible with scientific understandings of human origins. Some have cited the existence of Cain's wife as proof that one can view Genesis metaphorically. The first few chapters of Genesis represent theological reflections and are not historical accounts. Cain's wife serves as a narrative device through which theological themes such as sin, human nature, and God's grace are communicated to the reader. Others take a more literal approach, arguing that while certain details remain unclear, they do not sabotage the broader truths presented in the biblical account. To such a mindset as this, Cain's wife points out the often inscrutable ways God interacts with humankind through history, not all of which will be fully understood by humans. This approach more often calls for believers to embrace the limitations of human knowledge while standing on the truths conveyed in the scriptures. Another perspective views Cain's wife as a symbol of humanity's deep need for companionship and community. Despite the presence of sin, conflict, and the challenges faced by early humans, the story of Cain finding a wife and starting a family illustrates the resilience of the human spirit. It shows that even after committing serious mistakes, people still seek connection, love, and the opportunity to build a future. This interpretation highlights the enduring human desire to create relationships and establish roots, ensuring that life continues to grow and develop, even in the face of adversity. Modern biblical scholarship has also examined the cultural and historical context of Genesis as a means to gain an even greater insight into the story of Cain and his wife. This would occur through ancient Near Eastern literature, archaeology, and anthropology, to draw parallels and note themes that resound across different ancient cultures. A study of this nature indicates that the story of Cain and his wife is part of a tapestry that comprises several ancient stories on human origin, morality, and divine interaction. Cain's account and his wife are a little more than a biblical footnote, serving as a window into early human life's complications, the manner of biblical interpretation, and those eternal questions about sin and grace. Was she a sister, one of a different group of humans, or even a signifier of the interconnected fate of humanity? Whatever the answer may be, Cain's wife represents the unknowns that continue to make us search within the scriptures for meaning. As we dig deeper into this ancient mystery, it becomes evident that the Bible intentionally leaves certain questions unanswered, perhaps as an invitation for us to explore, question, and seek wisdom. Like many biblical enigmas, the story of Cain's wife urges us to look beyond the surface, contemplate the broader themes of human history, and appreciate the depth of these timeless narratives. If you found this exploration as captivating as we did, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.